today are alive on a very, very sad night. For us, for America, for all of us citizens who now have to bear the burden of living in a country with a fractured legal system. This is an attack on the America we knew and the America we still love. This is not the America we grew up in. The only crime proven today is the crime committed by the crooked Democrats who for 150 years, with very few interruptions, have corrupted thoroughly the city of New York. Their corruption is a matter of history. Unfortunately, that history is today. And what they have taken as hostage is one of the greatest gifts we have as Americans, a fair and impartial judicial system. Who, after this verdict, can say that we have a fair and impartial judicial system? Even Democrats have said only Donald Trump would be charged with this. When only one person can be charged with something, you do not live in a nation of laws. We're going to have to say from now on to our children, we used to be a nation of laws. We are now a nation of men, and the wrong men. Usually when you're a nation of men, it means you're a nation of bullies and dictators, and they fit that bill exactly. This trial would not have been very different if it were tried in the old Soviet Union, or even in Nazi Germany, or present China. The result was known from the beginning. There was never a charge of a crime. And they never explained what the crime was. And to this day, he hasn't been convicted of a crime. You can't describe it. He was convicted on 34 counts of a so-called false business record with intent to commit a felony. But we don't know what felony. Oh, it could be one of three on which they don't have to be unanimous. And we don't know if they were unanimous on 1, 2, 3, none. The judge's charge to the jury overturned 800 years of Anglo-American law and turned New York's judicial system into what it's been for much of its history, particularly in Manhattan, a completely politicized Democrat dictatorship. The judges are appointed by the Democrat political bosses. The elections are a farce. Engoron, the judge in the other unbelievably unjust case, was elected 3 times and never had an opponent. What does that tell you about the situation in New York? It tells you it's a dictatorship. It's a one-party system for well over 150 years, going back to the Civil War. It's a one-party system. And it's been corrupt for almost as long as history has been recording corruption. Boss Tweed is the well-known American creator of corruption, but it was going on before Boss Tweed. And we have a courthouse named for one of the biggest corruptors in American history, Boss Tweed. Present Democrats want to be reminded of their heritage. And they sure showed it today. But the real concern here is for all of you. This doesn't stop with Donald Trump. I know that because I've been the victim of it. I've got 2 prosecutors, one in Georgia, who's guilty of more crimes than you can count, and another one in Arizona with a copy and paste of the Georgia one. They want to put me in jail until I'm dead. For I don't know what, for being a lawyer. Oh, and there are plenty of others. We have Peter Navarro in jail. We've got Steve Bannon going to trial somehow, and we have no idea how he was selected, before acting Judge Mershon. I say acting judge because he's never been elected. The Democratic bosses have never thought enough of his legal acumen to put him on the ballot. For 22 years, he's been hanging around, the hanger-arounder, acting judge. Hey, acting judge, do this. Hey, acting judge, do that. Hey, acting judge, do whatever we tell you, because if you don't, you're not going to be hanging around very long. But this was a pretty good payday for the Mershon family. The daughter, who everybody got so upset when Trump criticized her like she was a 3-year-old, the daughter's making a fortune representing some of the most scurrilous Democrat politicians ever. And now it turns out that Judge Mershon, to whom this, I imagine, was also a great monetary gain, as well as getting credit with the party that would never nominate him for judge. His daughter was given free access passes for her paying clients. And several of them have been identified in the courtroom, including the mother of Congressman Goldman, who was the successor to Shifty Schiff in lying, and a thoroughly deranged anti-Trumper. His mom got a nice ticket because he's paying Mershon's daughter. Goldman's very rich. And then another one of her clients was there who pays her for lobbying. The two identified, and many more that are believed to be clients of hers. Daddy gave her free passes for them. You couldn't get in. Oh, maybe if you figured out how to hire his daughter, you could. But that wasn't announced that it could be done that way. That was kept for the Democratic crooks. They knew that. So this case is about their criminality, not Donald Trump's, and it's about your future. There were numerous startling things that happened in this case, and we'll review them and go over them so that you understand them, because we've just begun to fight. This is not a setback. It's not a setback at all. This was necessary. It was necessary so the American people could see just how corrupt our country has become. And that when I tell you, as one of the people who knows New York best, that New York has been well over 150 years of Democrat corruption, with a few exceptions. When independents or Republicans are elected, or reformers, and that's rare. I was only the third Republican elected in the 20th century, and only the second one to remain a Republican. One of my predecessors became a Democrat because he was so left-wing. And another was Fiorello LaGuardia, who succeeded a corrupt Mayor Walker, who had to leave office for corruption. And I succeeded a mayor who was one of our worst in history until de Blasio, who also took $1 million from inner city broadcasting and plenty of other things that were covered up. But they couldn't cover it up from me because I kind of made my reputation, not only putting the mafia in jail and former Nazis and Wall Street criminals, but a hell of a lot of corrupt New York politicians. In New York City, they generally were Democrats. Over the state, they were both. My general rule back then was, neither party has a monopoly on virtue or vice. But since then, the Democrats have gone off the charts. Maybe it started with the corrupt Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Maybe it started while they were in Arkansas selling the governorship. Maybe it started when they were selling the Lincoln bedroom. I don't think so. I think it started when they saw the big money with the Clinton Foundation. And then I think it started with Obama. I think Obama was put in to make us a different government. Yeah, basically a Marxist government. So we would fit right into the George Soros, Klaus Schwab Prince Obama view of a one world. And the people at the top of the one world are all rich. And as Klaus Schwab and his designate have told, we can all be poor. They'll take care of us. As long as they're rich. Just like the communists at the top are all rich. And Klaus Schwab would know the Nazis at the top were rich. Not saying he was a Nazi, but his family maybe, huh? Want to take a look at his family? It's a tragedy what has happened to our country. And then we have the sinister influence of George Soros. You want to talk about Nazis? We don't know about Klaus Schwab, but we sure as hell know about Soros, because he very, very proudly told us that when he was younger, he escaped the Holocaust by turning in his Jewish friends. And then he wants to accuse people who criticize him for being anti-Israel, for saying things that only people who hate the Jewish people say. He wants to accuse you of anti-Semitism. Go to hell. He accused me of anti-Semitism once, and I said I was a better Jew than he was. And he never responded. These are the kinds of people. These are the kinds of people that are trying that have created what you saw in a New York courtroom. And maybe we have to go through this. And I'll tell you why. 10 years ago, I wouldn't believe any of this. If I said this 10 years ago, I would ask my good friends to put me in an insane asylum. I would never believe that America, first of all, I would never thought I would hear it in my entire life, an American judge telling a jury that any part of a criminal verdict didn't have to be unanimous. I mean, the Democrats, try to destroy me in every way possible, but they can't believe this because they don't have anybody like this. I actually believe in our system of justice. Bragg, who is a disgrace to prosecution, mentioned Tom Dewey, one of my predecessors as U.S. attorney. I prosecuted way more cases than he did. I had much more impact on the mafia than he did. And he was one of the best prosecutors in the 20th century, except I was a heck of a lot better. I crushed the mafia. He indicted and convicted Lucky Luciano, a lot more than Bragg ever did. Bragg even mentioning him today was a sacrilege. Bragg doesn't belong in the same sentence with Tom Dewey or Bob Morgenthau, for that matter. They would never have brought a case like this, no matter what they were instructed by their political party or George Soros, who paid for Bragg. Bragg also paid for Antifa. He also paid for Black Lives Matter. He also paid the protesters that took over Colombia. And he's also the biggest contributor to Joe Biden. And his son is taking up where he left off. He also installed in 50 or 60 cities prosecutors who create crime, who create records like more homicides than ever before in the history of Philadelphia, more homicides than ever before in the city of St. Louis. They have gotten more black people killed, particularly young people, than any group of prosecutors in history. And they all come from one source, Soros. He's decided that prosecutors in St. Louis are important to him, and that prosecutors in Los Angeles and San Francisco, cities that he's ruined singularly with his prosecutors, and New York on the way to ruining with Bragg. When he puts that kind of money in, no strings, like hell there are no strings. This guy didn't become fabulously wealthy by not putting strings on the money that he puts out. So, where do we go from here? Oh, my. Where we go from here is we go to the American people. We plead our case to them. American people are not 90% Democrats like this jury was, and probably the 10% that weren't are. They're not afflicted by a disease here that's in the air called Trump derangement syndrome that gets them to vote for incompetent, crooked, lazy, dishonest politicians for years and years and years. No matter the deterioration of the poor black communities throughout America, they're held in the grip of, I guess, what substitutes for slavery for the Democrat Party, the party of slavery. And they're held in that grip so that they will reflexively vote Democrat. Now, maybe that's changing. Maybe it's changing big time. It will change. You can only do that to people for so long. They've done it for a long time. I recognized that back in the 70s with the Great Society, early 70s, and left the crooked Democratic Party. The odor was too much. And now it's taken over America. We've never had a president as corrupt as Joe Biden. So, American people, you're going to save us. You're going to save yourself for your children and for your children's children. You want them to grow up in the America we used to have. Not an America of a two-tier justice system. A two-tier justice system is, in fact, as you saw here in New York, no justice at all. We've lived with that for over 150 years. We don't need America to live with it. People are fleeing this city in record numbers. Just like they're fleeing Los Angeles. Just like they're fleeing New Jersey. They all governed under Democrat progressive principles / Marxism. Time to rise up. We've only begun to fight. And we're going to talk a little about that when we come back.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Welcome back to the America's Mayor Live, and I am very alive right now. Because, as I said, I've just begun to fight. I would like to use my knowledge of the criminal justice system, which is, without being, unpleasant or whatever, is considerably greater than the people who prosecuted this case, maybe even the people who defended this case. But I've been doing it a lot longer and with a lot more results than any of them. Let's begin. Let's begin and conclude with the easiest possible analysis, and that is that this case is an outrage to the American judicial system in many respects. But when the judge told the jury he could find certain elements of this crime, and it doesn't have to be unanimous, it was breathtakingly corrupt. So much so that in an honest system, which New York isn't, the chief judge would have pronounced that he really should be taken off the case, and it should start all over again. I mean, you can't change a rule that's 800 years old because you want to interfere in an election, or because you think a candidate shouldn't be elected. Now, we know that he hates Trump. I mean, the infirmities in this case are so long. I don't know what the brief on appeal is going to look like. You could have 20 points. Usually you write a brief on appeal and you have point 1 and point 2 and point 3. I mean, even bad ones come up to 5 or 6, like the case in which they found that Smith, who was selected to prosecute Trump twice, was a completely unethical prosecutor. Yet Crooked Garland selected him, and he selected him to repeat basically the crime that he committed in the case that he tried before, where he took the governor of Virginia, tried him. The guy was convicted, and then he was reversed on appeal 9-0, with the Supreme Court writing about what an ethical, dishonest prosecutor Smith is. Now, you have any interest in justice, you don't pick Smith to prosecute that case. You pick Smith to do a frame-up. Well, that accounts for 2 of the cases. Alvin Bragg's expertise is letting people out of prison, not putting people in prison. I mean, basically, one of the reasons for the crime in this city is over and over again the people he lets out to beat the living daylights out of New Yorkers. I mean, the idea that that they might put Trump in prison, it would be the first guy put in prison in weeks. They had to have a special meeting at Rikers Island to discuss it. They're so unused to people being put in prison. I mean, Trump should have gone out and beat somebody up. He would have gotten off completely. Well, the error with regard to the unanimous verdict is just impossible for me to describe to you as to the enormity of it and the damage it does to our judicial system and to basically America considering itself a nation of laws or even calling itself a nation of laws. This requirement of unanimity, as described by, I'm going to show you the opinion, maybe you'll see why Justice or Acting Judge Merchan didn't cite it. This might be too difficult for him to read. This is the opinion. This is called the law. This is by the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. They determine the law, not the crooked Democrats in New York. Couldn't be explained more succinctly than in a 6-3 decision, including several of the most liberal, left-wing, progressive, and in my point of view, wacky members of the Supreme Court. They agreed with this. The disagreements on it were technical. Justice Thomas, for example, who is the 6th vote, used a different rationale to reach the same result. That, of course, a verdict has to be unanimous. But it needs to be unanimous in all respects. Justice Gorsuch points out in here that requirement goes back to the 14th century. That means in the time of Elizabeth I, not the second, English juries were instructed that they can only convict if they found the person guilty unanimously. You couldn't walk into an English courtroom at the time of the Revolution and find anyone talking about a non-unanimous verdict, or when John Adams represented the British troops in an exceedingly unpopular case that almost destroyed his political career. They had to be found unanimously guilty. So is everyone else that's ever been found guilty in America. Small exception in 2 places. Louisiana, and I believe the other was Oregon. But Louisiana was the main one. You know why it came about? The Ku Klux Klan did it. Because they wanted to be certain that they could get hung juries, if necessary, and acquittals for Ku Klux Klan's members that killed black people. That was the genesis of it. Read Gorsuch's opinion. And then adopted later on by Oregon for similar reasons. So Gorsuch points out that those 2 states were acting contrary to the federal Constitution because the federal Constitution applies through the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment to the states with regard to your basic rights. The difference is Justice Thomas did it under the comedy clause, but you really don't want me to explain that. But both agreed that it is unthinkable that you could have, in any respect, a verdict without unanimity. That it's probably the singular most basic fact about a criminal trial, along with proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And one of our proudest guarantees that makes us a nation above all others in terms of protection of the weak and the innocent, and being sure that when we take someone's liberty away, we're not making a mistake. I was haunted by that as a prosecutor. The day I woke up, when I stopped being, when I had resigned, and then I ran for mayor shortly thereafter, but the day that I got up on February 1st, 1989, and I wasn't the U.S. attorney any longer, who had prosecuted more significant cases than any of my predecessors, and certainly my successors, I felt a great weight off my shoulders. And it was the weight of being absolutely correct. I did not want on my conscience even the slightest possibility that I convicted an innocent man or woman. Maybe as somebody who grew up wanting to be a priest, maybe as somebody who's always considered the law sacred, it weighed on me very, very heavily. I personally reviewed any case that lawyers wanted me to review. So if a defense lawyer complained about cases, they would get to see me. Sometimes I would tell them, it's very unlikely I'm going to reverse what my assistants decided. And I'm going to come in it with a prejudice in favor of them. But I'll listen to you, and if you're right, and I did on certain occasions reverse my assistants, who were all younger and less experienced and more likely to be overzealous. We don't have that anymore. That's gone. That's gone. These prosecutors weren't just overzealous. As I said, the only crime committed in that courtroom or proven in that courtroom are the crimes of having prosecuted an innocent man and destroyed the American legal system. We can't say ever again until we cure this that we're a nation of laws. We're not. Not when a judge can change an 800-year rule in the middle of a trial because he wants to get that guy. But they were doing it from the beginning of this case, from the very, very beginning. So I'm not going to ask you to read Ramos. Although you could, just read Gorsuch's opinion, which is the opinion of the court. It gets a little complicated because a number of the other justices who come to exactly the same result, some of them even, I can't say, you couldn't be much stronger than Gorsuch on this. His opinion is only 26 pages. So, that could have been doable even for a fairly unaccomplished judge like this acting judge, who's never been even nominated for a judgeship. And I think it is not all that I think you'd understand when he says that the Supreme Court 13 times, and now 14, has said that a criminal case, all aspects of a criminal verdict must be unanimous. I think you'd get that. Maybe you'd be more impressed with Justice Sotomayor saying the same thing in a concurring opinion. Maybe because she's a liberal, he would listen to her. I doubt that Judge Kavanaugh would mean more to him than Judge Gorsuch. They're both horrible Republicans. And just think of what they did to Justice Kavanaugh. How they also threatened to kill him, which you could have blamed on Chuck E. Cheese. That's my affectionate description of our senior senator and the guy who double-crossed Israel. You also could have gone to the concurring opinion, which is very interesting, by Justice Thomas. But again, Justice Thomas is someone they want to he's on the persecution list. So all but three justices, Alito and Roberts, who they don't like particularly, and let's see who the liberal was that dissented. And they dissented on the grounds that, more or less like states' rights, that a state has the right to decide to have trials with something less than unanimous verdicts. Although it's like they really don't believe it when you read it. But the fact is, the crooked judge, the crooked acting judge, can't even rely on that, because then that would mean there'd have to be a New York law, like there was in Louisiana to frame blacks. There'd have to be a New York law allowing it. It was Justice Kagan who joined them. So it was Alito, the chief, and Kagan who dissented. The other 6 clearly said that the states must have unanimous verdicts. Federal government has always had to have it. And the states have always had to have it. As he said, the 14 opinions, 13 before this, and you had this deviation for these 2 states for racist reasons. And that's what he relied on. That's what he relied on. And they want to accuse Donald Trump of being racist? Also, they're too damn lazy and stupid to bother to read this. You think Bragg read this? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because if you read it, you would have talked about it. I don't think the judge read it, because he had to distinguish it. He's just a lowly little apparatchik of the Democratic Party. He's not even a real judge. He's an acting judge. He can't defy the Supreme Court. He did. 100% did. So the trial is now over. We're going to get to review it on appeal. It was Oregon. I was right. I just wanted to be sure I was right about that. Louisiana and Oregon permitted non-unanimous juries. And that was cleared up in Ramos versus Louisiana, in which they were told they can't do that. New York never did. So where he comes up with this, I think I know, and I think it's some kind of a screwed up interpretation of a law that I know better than anybody, RICO, and the continuing criminal enterprise law, where once you prove the 3 requisite predicates, the other predicates, if they are charged, can be determined by less than a unanimous verdict. But you've already proved the completed crime. Here it's so bad, we don't know what he was convicted of. We don't know what Trump was convicted of. He was convicted of a false record in a false business record that was entered with the intent to effect a felony. Now, that felony could be tax evasion. But we don't know if they unanimously agreed on that. It's hard to understand because they never charged on what constitutes tax evasion. It could be a violation of a state campaign finance law, but never charged on the elements of that either. Or it could be, and this was the one that it all started with, FECA, the Federal Election Campaign Act. And the violation would be that the payment to her was a campaign contribution. Now, they weren't charged on that either, and they weren't allowed to hear expert testimony on it. They actually were allowed to hear the non-expert testimony of a disbarred lawyer, Cohen, who said it was a violation. The Trump campaign offered a former commissioner who would testify that it wasn't a violation and explain why. He was never allowed to testify, nor did the judge charge on it. Nor did the judge require that they be unanimous on one of them. What he said was, if you can, as long as you're unanimous on one of the, it's a 3, you put them all 3 to get 4 on one, 4 for one, 4 for the other, 4 for the other. We don't really need to know what the crime is, because that really isn't important. What really is important is preventing him from being president. And I'm willing to do this because I don't care if I get reversed, because it'll be after the election. God, it was so cynical. So cynical. Please, please, I beg you, prove to me the American people haven't changed so much that they're going to allow their nation of laws to be taken away from them by these thieves. I know these people. I want to leave an America that was better than the one I was born into. If I died today, or you did, we'd be living in America that's in terrible condition. Its situation with regard to its legal system puts it somewhere close to dictatorships. Trials like this don't occur in decent countries. Politicians prosecute their opponents in dictatorships. When Biden went to Maduro and made a deal with him, because Biden likes to make deals with communist countries, he said that in order to lift the sanctions, he had to do something. Now, I'm going to explain that to you as soon as we come back, and then we're going to start a little discussion, because there's so much to this that it's really interesting to see how people viewed it. And the most important thing is, how is it going to play out in the next 2 or 3 weeks? It's sort of like one of those debates where somebody wins or loses, and we don't really know until 2 weeks later. We'll be back very shortly. And if I put my name on something, I truly believe in it. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to something I'm incredibly proud of. My own brand of organic specialty coffee, Rudy Coffee. Believe me when I say it's the best coffee you'll ever try. It's smooth, rich, chocolatey, and gentle on your stomach. It's so good, I even recommend drinking it black. It comes in 3 varieties, including what I promise is the best decaf you'll ever have. You can order now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting rudy.coffee. By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause, the cause of truth, justice, and American democracy. You'll also be supporting the Call to Action nonprofit, which is devoted to helping veterans and first responders, so you can make a difference and taste the difference by ordering today at rudy.coffee. That's Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live, and my chance to describe to you the damage, the serious, serious damage done to all of us today in a crooked New York courtroom. And that's been that way for a long time. In political cases, I want to qualify for you when I tell you that the judicial system here has been corrupt for so many years. And I'll explain it to you as a law professor explained it to me when I was in law school. He said the New York Supreme Court, particularly Manhattan, has some fine judges because they have to deal with some very complex business cases. But the one thing very disturbing about it is, with regard to political cases, they're all corrupt. And how is that? Well, because they get appointed by the Democrat bosses. And the amount of corruption that goes on in these Democrat clubhouses is amazing. I mean, I prosecuted a lot of it. At one time, the mafia controlled it through Carmine DeSapio. You know that scene in The Godfather where one of the family members says to the Godfather, you know, you got to share all those judges and politicians you have in your pocket. That was true. There's even a tape demonstrating it that was brought out on the Kefauver Commission. I want you to know that I'm not saying these things idly. There's a great deal of evidence and knowledge about the vast corruption, particularly on political cases in this decrepit one-party system. That's what happens, like in Chicago, when you have a one-party system. Change, competition is as necessary to the vitality of a republic as it is to a business, maybe more. This crime had 3 elements. None of them were proven. In fact, he was proven innocent. Element number 1 was there has to be a false entry into a business record. The entry that was made into this business record was legal expense. The entry was true because it was not just a payment to Stormy Daniels, which in fact was a legal expense, but it was money for taxes, money for reimbursements, money for technological equipment or advice. The number two person in the accountant's office, I think it's Mr. McConney, the only testimony on this was for him, was that Donald Trump didn't select the language. Legal expenses. When it was described to him and Weisselberg, they went to what they call a drop-down list, and one that was described as an ancient drop-down list, and this seemed to be the closest description of this group of expenses, and they put it down. Where's the intent to violate the law? How is that false beyond a reasonable doubt? And they were paid, it was paid over a period of time to a lawyer. And even if the payment to Stormy Daniels, whatever else it was a legal expense. Nothing illegal about it, although the judge refused to charge that. He said the state can argue it, and the defense can argue, and the state hasn't disputed it. Any decent judge would have charged that, so the jury wouldn't be confused. Nothing at all illegal about the payment. In fact, her lawyer, a former lawyer, testified to that. He said, "Would you call this hush money?" He said, "No, I call it consideration." Consideration is the legal term for what's offered in exchange in a contract to bind the contract. It's the thing that you'll probably remember when people say, if you retain a lawyer, you got to give him $1. There has to be consideration. That's a little ancient as to the necessity for it, but in order to have a binding contract, something has to be given. So this was a binding contract. She was given money, and she agreed because she wanted the money, and she wanted to agree, and she didn't want to go public with this. She wouldn't go public with it. And the reasons for it weren't proven. It could be, as they say, or it could be as Trump and Trump's allies say. It wasn't proven. It wasn't found unanimously or non-unanimously. So the description, legal expenses, is a valid one. Case should end right there. There's no reason to go on and then try to find the rest of it, which is that makes it because, in fact, if that's the end of it, it's also barred by the statute of limitations because it's so old. The way it gets beyond the statute of limitations is if it's with the intent to commit or aid in the commission of a felony. A felony. Not a number of predicates, a felony. He hasn't been convicted of that because of the instructions. The instructions don't make clear what that felony is. It could be one of three. It might be some combination of those three. That's not a crime. I mean, Donald Trump can validly tell people, I wasn't convicted of a crime. I was convicted of a crooked, distorted legal fiction. And the fact is, they never proved any of those things. They never proved it was some kind of tax violation. They never put on any testimony about tax violations. How could the jury determine it's a tax violation? They weren't given any instructions on it. Oh, it's a tax violation. I know that. Or how could they determine it was a violation of the state campaign laws? And also, how does that square with you're also charging federal campaign? It's just a state election or a federal election? And where's the charge to the jury on how you find a violation of the state campaign finance law? And you're even told it doesn't have to be unanimous. And finally, the big one, an illegal campaign contribution, they refused to allow expert testimony on it. And the judge never charged the elements of it. And the Federal Election Commission doesn't believe it is a crime. They kind of are the authority on it. It also was one of the main reasons for the declination by Biden's Justice Department, the Southern District of New York, Bragg's predecessor, and Bragg the first time he looked at the case, until he got his arm twisted by Biden and by Moneybag Soros. And then we have intent to commit the crime. You got to prove intent. Except the testimony is quite clear that Trump had nothing to do with the entry of this description. So this was entered without his participation. There's no evidence that he participated. So how could he have the intent to do anything with it? And finally, if the intent was to affect the 2016 election, this was 2017. Please help me. I might hurt myself. July 11 is the sentencing. Over the last couple of days, the New York City Department of Corrections used to be the best in the nation and now is one of the worst. Under Bernie Kerik, he had brought violence down by 90%. Go check 60 Minutes if you don't believe me. Go check their piece in 1998 in which everybody was worried they'd do a hit job because they don't like Republicans. They even came in ready to do a hit job on Rikers Island that used to be the worst jail in the country. I think they had done a piece on that 10 years earlier. And Mike Wallace was absolutely floored by how Bernie Kerik and his team had changed it and reduced violence by 90%. And he had like 13,000 people there. They now have 4,000 there, and it's one of the worst in the country. Democrats can't manage a paper bag. And the only thing they can do is make illegal money. They sure as hell don't do anything for the public. Look at Biden. Every time he went out to do something for the public, he failed, but his family got millions. It's sort of the prototype of the modern, upper-level, elite Democrat. Not the decent people who are part of the party, who should change now. What the hell do you want to be part of the party of slavery? If you're all that sensitive about labels and taking out statues, and you got to change the name of that party, right? We're a bunch of phonies. So let's listen to the phony in chief. Let's listen to Joe Biden because I'm going to answer. He asks a question, he doesn't get an answer. I think even before I answer it, I'm going to see if the guys here can answer it. Let's play the dope in chief and
is clearly unhinged. He calls insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol patriots. Patriots. If reelected, he wants to pardon, quote, every one of them. Let me ask you, what do you think he would have done on January 6th if black Americans had stormed it? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if black Americans had stormed the Capitol?
Okay. Ted, what would have happened if black Americans had stormed the Capitol? And is there some objective evidence you can point to?
Well, let's look at in the summer of love, the summer of 2020, I'd say around May.
Yeah.
In black
May, June, July?
Here in New York City, St. Louis, Minneapolis, of course. And by the way, I was in D.C. I lived downtown, and it's a heavy black population, and we saw what happened. The Democrat Party and these DAs in these places, and the media was so complicit. They made these folks into heroes.
Black people as well as the white people. Yeah,
that's right. You can't forget the white liberals in the suburbs. I mean, they're the ones that were trying to come anyway. So yeah, the point is, if it was a predominantly black group, they would be hailed as heroes. There'd be murals painted about them, and any of them that were.
There'd be a statue like the George Floyd statue.
That's what would happen.
So the simple answer to what would have happened if they were black, they wouldn't have been prosecuted. Yeah. Rob, what do you think would have happened if everybody on January 6th was black? it would be a national holiday, right?
Yeah, of course. It would be exactly the opposite of what we're witnessing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd be national heroes for trying to save the republic from a crooked election. They'd be people who were exercising their First Amendment rights to petition the government and to prevent the government from carrying out an injustice. I mean, the guy has to be disconnected from the America that he's governing if he really asks that question. And if you can't answer that question, honestly, you really are a racist. I mean, all you have to do is look at what these Soros DAs do. They let the black criminals go free much more often than the white. They let the white go free, too. You know what that results in? Since black crime is mostly black on black, it results in a lot more blacks being victimized. I mean, you could honestly say that these progressive DAs as a group and Soros as the funder to the tune of 40 to 60 million have killed more blacks than in 100 years. I mean, these record homicide rates are happening in cities that have, unfortunately, very poor black populations in certain areas that haven't been helped in 30 or 40 years of democratic dictatorship. And they're getting killed in much higher numbers. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and catch up on a couple of the other things that maybe are being kept from you because we do not live any longer in a nation of laws. Delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now. This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live. And we were just listening to a brief set of comments from RFK Jr., who basically says that he wants to beat Trump on a level playing field, not in a crooked courtroom. That's the distinction between an honest man and a crook. And the crook is the guy in the White House. Now, Kennedy has made a complaint that he's been kept out of the debate. And he does charge both people with keeping him out of the debate. I've never heard Donald Trump saying he should be out of the debate.
Yeah.
But the complaint has one evidentiary citation. The complaint cited a May 17 Washington Post report that the Biden team spoke to CNN about nixing RFK Jr.'s involvement. Believe me, Trump didn't talk to CNN. Believe me, CNN doesn't care if Trump wants Robert Kennedy in the debate or not.
He's actually helping RFK by not talking.
Jr., come on, you're smart enough to know that it's Biden that's keeping you out, even though the polls are mixed as to who you hurt most. They are convinced, although when I look at the polls, I worry that you might take votes from Trump. They are so convinced that you're not. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a poll in Virginia the day before the verdict, so we have to see what happens to them after the verdict. But on this issue, one that would make you think It was 42-42. Great news for Trump. I mean, Trump lost it by 10%. It's in the D column very solidly. It is not needed for Trump to win the electoral vote by, a big margin. He doesn't need Virginia. 42-42 probably means he's ahead, given the biases of people. However, when you put Kennedy and the other two in, Biden beats him by 3 points, which means that Kennedy is the main third-party candidate, which means in Virginia, he's helping Biden, but they want to keep him out. Maybe they know something we don't. I do think, although I sure wouldn't bet my life on it, that in the long run, Kennedy would take more from Biden because he is more of a Democrat than a Republican. And as people get to see more and more of Biden's corruption, they're either going to stay home or vote for one of the other candidates. And if they can't bring themselves to voting for Trump, they'll vote for RFK. So that will take votes away from Biden. I don't see people ultimately, as they learn what RFK Jr.'s full set of beliefs are, I don't think they would vote for an RFK Jr. presidency or for him as an alternative, particularly given his almost messianic views on climate change. I mean, they're worse than Biden's, if that's possible. His support for reparations, his support for massive government. They have listened to him on things where we agree with him and kind of admire him on the whole fraud that was carried out by the Bidens with regard to the pandemic and the closing of schools and the cooperation with the Marxist Teachers Union. And also his weakness on foreign policy. RFK Jr. seems to have inherited from his, they could go back to his grandfather, a hatred of communism that doesn't exist with the Bidens and the Obamas. Obama seems to me to be a guy trained by communists. And Biden is following the Marxist program for taking over a country point by point by point. Well, what do you think this whole thing with your kids is all about? It's all about making the child a property of the state. Hitler wanted them and Stalin wanted them by 2. Marx recommended 3. The Democrat Party's working on 3. That's where early education begins. I mean, given the job they do on regular education, imagine what they get. All it means is they're going to stop brainwashing your kid before they're 5. Who knows? They may start trying to change their sex at 2.
So, but Mayor, who do you feel that RFK hurts in the election?
I mean, I really think I'm humble enough to say I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the poll, I have seen both results in polls, and I don't think whereas the polls involving Trump can sometimes be affected by the fact that he's not the establishment choice, and a lot of people will pretend they're voting for the establishment. They'll pretend they're voting for the guy that everybody else is voting for. It's like the herd mentality. Yeah. I faced it every time I ran. I almost always ran 5 to 6 points better than I was polled, winning or losing.
Yeah.
I mean, the day I lost to Dinkins the first time, I was going to lose by 12%. I lost by less than 1.
Wow.
That's a big difference, babes. And when I beat him by 2.5, I was going to lose to him by 4.
And when you,
that's a 6-point switch on election day.
And when you lost, you were
6. The exit poll in the first election that I won, I was behind with the first exit poll by 6, and then the final exit poll by 4, and then the final election I won by a little over 2%.
And of course, in the one the race you lost, it was the closest mayoral race in history, right? In '89.
I think it was, yeah.
And then when you won, it was also very close.
like third
because
or
of the
maybe third or fourth.
because of the cheating.
Maybe third or fourth. Well, yeah. I mean, there was definitely cheating. I can say that now. You say, well, why didn't you contest it? Because of what I've been taught in law school. I'm not going to beat a Democrat. Look, I'm a lawyer. I'm practical. I have to be. I have to tell my client the truth. You know, when my lawyer told me I'm not going to get a fair trial in the District of Columbia, he was just avoiding malpractice. I mean, you do not, a Republican is not, particularly a Trump supporter, is not going to get a fair trial in the District of Columbia. The facts prove it. 100 J6 trials, nobody completely acquitted. Can't be that they write about all of them. The best prosecutors' offices have like a 3, 4, 5% slippage rate, and they aren't the best prosecutors' office by any means.
And can you tell us about a Manhattan jury? Tell us about the jury that President Trump faced, especially in this criminal case. And is it truly a jury of his peers?
Well, if you consider 90% Democrats his peers,
It literally voted 87% for Joe Biden. Manhattan.
yeah,
I'm not sure if this was if it was a jury pool Manhattan or all of New York City.
only Manhattan.
Wow, so that's
See, if
87% Joe
tried
Biden.
in the federal court, the jury pool would include Westchester. It would include
The federal district.
yeah, it would include several of the suburban counties north of New York. Or if you would go into the Eastern District, it would include Nassau and Suffolk County. So you'd have a little more mixture of people. Also, the failure to change venue was startling. I mean, in the biggest political trial that I had when I was mayor, prosecuting Ed Koch's political bosses, venue was changed because there was too much prejudicial publicity. My God, it was nothing in comparison to the condemnations of Trump by people, including the judge's daughter. The judge himself gave money to the Stop Trump movement. Exactly. I mean, they were trying to recuse Justice Alito from the January 6 cases because there was an American flag hung backwards outside his house. Now, I didn't know this, nor apparently did he or his wife, but somebody did that on January 6th. Now, tell us what your understanding of that is until you found that out, Ted.
Which, when I found out about which part.
Without hearing what I just said.
Yeah. Which
if you throw an American flag backwards.
Yeah, so, okay, you want my honest... yeah, it is interesting to me.
Would you associate that with January 6th?
No. First of all, no, of course not. I associate it with distress. Now, personal opinion, I don't know how I feel about doing it. I actually wanted to ask your opinion on it, but that's not even relevant, right?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
I get a weird feeling. Anyway,
it feels funny to turn it upside down, right?
Yeah, right.
It feels like you're desecrating.
It does, right? It's so
sacred. It is a military. Even the military uses it.
Yes.
To show that a ship is in distress, for example.
Yeah.
So I guess it's okay, although it feels funny because you're instructed to be so respectful with regard to the flag.
But it's certainly not a January 6th issue. And then there's another flag that they tried to tie back to January 6th. It's like a pine tree, and I wish we had it.
But I don't think that involves Alito.
No, it all involves his wife, right? And here are these liberals who are the ones that are shouting from the rooftops about independence for women and how they're all independent. So on one hand, these liberals who are after Alito want to tie him to everything.
Meanwhile, this guy himself, acting Judge Mershon's
daughter,
the corrupt Mershon.
Yeah.
The daughter is making big moolah off Democratic politicians who hate Trump, including the ones who got access to the trial. Dan paid her.
Dan Goldman's mother.
This is like a. I mean, what was the?
What it's like is it's like these people are doing things so blatantly that they know that they're going to get away with it, and really shoving everybody's face in it.
Look, can you imagine giving your daughter, knowing that she's raising money for all the Democrats, giving them free access passes? I mean, you think they put them on Ticketron and made a little vig on it? I mean, they are Democrats. I mean, they'll do anything.
Oh, I put anything past them.
So his daughter is making big money on it, and he gags Trump from talking about it. I mean, like she was a baby infant that has never been involved in politics. She's a damn political operative. She's a nasty political operative. You should look what she puts on social media. She's got Trump in prison gear. Can you imagine if you were on trial? Just think of yourself for a moment as somebody accused of something you didn't do. And the judge sitting on your case has an adult daughter who puts out pictures of you in prison gear. Do you think you would get a fair trial with that judge? Don't you think that judge should be removed from your case when there are many other judges who can try it? Don't you think a judge should be removed from your case if he contributed to a fund that said stop you? He contributed to a fund that said stop Trump, and he's presiding over his trial. The judge did. The judge contributed to his opponent, who we all know is using these cases to try to interfere in the election. Because if he ever had a fair election, Trump would probably win by 15%. Finally, the wife contributed also to Biden. It's a Biden devoted family, anti-Trump, stop Trump. We don't have to speculate about it. He contributed money to stop Trump, and his daughter's making money from stopping Trump, and she's making money on tickets. This is outrageous. It's also outrageous that he told them they could do a less than unanimous verdict. I swear, the chief judge should have come down and removed him.
And this is coming from somebody who knows the law. Rudy Giuliani, he's telling you.
You don't have to know the law to know the jury verdicts in American courts and English courts have to be unanimous. Only very, very uneducated, stupid people don't know it. And this is like one of the fundamentals. This would be as if, the day he walked into the court, he just found him guilty, which in effect he did. He did everything possible to get him convicted, short of directing a verdict of acquittal. The charge, and I know charges really well, was a direction to convict, and then removed even the problem of having to find one of the three underlying crimes by basically not charging on the elements of it, and then telling me they don't have to be unanimous on it. Not allowing somebody to come on the stand and explain a campaign finance violation so that they can intelligently determine whether there was one. And then they're told they don't have to be unanimous about it. I can't think of any more things he could have done to prejudice the trial than how about all the testimony he allowed from Stormy Daniels on all the salacious things that she testified to. And boy, she's an expert pornography star who can make those things up and create all kinds of salacious pictures, true or false. And he lets her do it, and he himself admits that it's not relevant, but the defense didn't object. But they had made a standing objection to it, which means he's supposed to. They had made a standing objection to it, which means he should have ruled on it when it happened. Now, why they didn't get up and object at that time, I can't tell you. You have to ask them. I'm a different kind of lawyer. I don't mind fighting, as you can tell. I don't mind fighting with the judge for my client. This judge and I would not have gotten along on purpose. I would have taken a lot of the heat that Trump got because it would have been my big mouth.
Right. Well,
but I wouldn't have allowed my client to be pushed around like this.
Well, I
don't know that when he said I'm not going to charge on unanimous. I don't know if I wouldn't have walked out of the courtroom,
right,
and said we're not going to participate in a trial that goes back to before the Magna Carta.
Yeah, and I want to know what the hell.
I think it's unethical for me to participate in this trial. This is beyond just an error. This is changing basic, fundamental American law.
Yes. And what does it take for the American people to finally believe that their country is being hijacked? Aren't these people like myself? My grandparents were from Germany. I used to hear stories. Didn't they listen? This may be like, remember we used to talk about that, how kids don't listen to their elders anymore? That's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. It could literally be tantamount to that. Do they listen to their parents? Do they listen to their grandparents? Do they know that there is such thing as communist takeovers of countries that absolutely do massive destruction? And then somebody said something very interesting today. Any plot to destroy America must include a plot to destroy its system of justice.
Of course.
This is right out of...
In fact, if you destroy our system of justice, you've destroyed us.
Right.
You don't have to do anything else. I mean, they already have taken over our school system.
America, wake up already, please. Would you wake up from this nightmare?
When you watched the protests funded by Soros and the Democrats, did you realize how deeply they have infiltrated and brainwashed our educational system?
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of just exactly how Marxist and communist the teachers' union is? And do you realize the teachers' union exists only for the benefit of the teachers? The hell with the students. I knew that from my experience as mayor. I used to offer them extra pay for the better ones. Really a lot of extra pay. Average pay for the average ones and reductions for the poor ones and dismissal. They refused. All teachers have to be treated the same, which means you're protecting, they do. They protect the sex deviant who has to be paid while they're going through 5 years of an internal trial. I figured out I could convict them faster when I was mayor. I had real DAs in New York then. They were all colleagues of mine from being U.S. attorney. And I would ask them to prosecute these people for me because it was easier to prosecute them and stick them in prison than it was to get them out of the school system. So I did have to live through the indignity of sending them money to Sing Sing until we could get them off the city payroll. I was paying people in Sing Sing. But at least they were leaving my kids alone. That's what a mayor does who's a real mayor, who says to himself, my job is to protect my people, not to protect myself. Yeah, sure. Adam sure wasn't thinking about that when he invited all of these aliens to America who aren't being vetted in the millions. So that we're in a situation where the weasel FBI director says we have more terrorists in this country than ever before. How did it get that way? Did that happen under Trump? No. Trump was getting excoriated because he wanted to focus on the countries that had terrorists and stop and slow down the number of people coming in from those countries. A perfectly valid thing for an American president to do who has to protect you. One of the architects of that program was me. So you want to fight about it, come and fight with me about it. Because I know how to protect people. One of the ways you do it is you don't let people in here from China right now. He lets them in quicker than other places. The Chinese complained about a year ago that it was taking too long to get in illegally. He cut it down to 4 questions. You can get a lot if you give somebody $31 million.
Well, we're all aware of how we're not allowed to talk about the stolen election. That became a big shit show recently, right? Well, how about this? Not allowed to report on Hunter Biden when we have evidence, as the mayor points out earlier in today's show, in the 3:00 show. Yeah. Why can't you report on that? There's actual evidence for it, but yet you're not allowed to talk about it.
Well, Hunter Biden's, the fact that Hunter Biden is only going on trial now for one of the lesser things that he did is a testament to the fact that we don't have a system of justice in this country any longer. Don't be fooled by the 2-tier thing that sounds wrong, but a little euphemistic. A 2-tier system of justice is no justice at all. What's the sine qua non of justice? Equal treatment for all. A 2-tier system is unequal treatment.
That's right.
That's injustice. And then when it's on this scale, then you have a country that can no longer say, we have a justice system you can all admire. I mean, I remember, I think it was Churchill commenting on our justice system when somebody was complaining about it, which says, oh, your justice system has a lot of problems, but it just happens to be the best in the world. Not anymore. You can't say that for the last 5 years that our system has been the best in the world with the number of people that have been prosecuted for solely political reasons and the number of really serious criminals that were not prosecuted solely for criminal reasons. You can't justify not prosecuting Hillary Clinton and then prosecuting for putting classified material on her server. The damn server was hacked, destroying 30,000 pieces of email, including classified documents, and then prosecuting Donald Trump. You can't justify that, other than you're a corrupt country. I mean, you can try, you can bullshit, but that's what you're doing. And the rest of the world, even the ones that sort of are liberal, they know that. America's not a country any longer that you emulate in order to have a fair, equal, and very admirable system of justice. It's one you avoid.
Mayor, and so you've been around the world, you've spent so much time in a lot of different places. How will this verdict play out around the world? I mean, look, the international media is no better, and it might be worse, right, than the issues we have with the media here at home. How will this be looked at throughout the world? And I suppose that's a big question, and there's different.
Yeah, I don't
differently in different places, right?
That I can at this point give you a really good answer to around the world.
Yeah, it's a big world.
I really haven't followed how it's been reported on in Italy and England and France and whatever. I think it'll play out against Trump. Internationally, because of the press, not the people.
Yeah.
The people internationally, surprisingly, really like Trump. During his administration, when I would travel, I would get an enormous number of people in France and in England and tell me, I wish we had somebody like him, a real leader.
Yeah.
Of course, if you read the press, he was some kind of monster.
Yeah.
Because their press is as bad as ours.
If not worse.
No, it's not worse. It's actually not as bad, but it's bad. I don't know that they would have tolerated a desecration of their system of justice like our press did. I'm not sure. I'm not sure in England if they would have tolerated an end to a unanimous verdict after it goes back to, basically Richard the Lionheart. So, but in any event, let's talk about it domestically. How's it going to play out politically? There's a good argument either way. A conviction is a very odious thing. It's a thing that no matter how much you dissect it, people will say, "Oh, well, a jury of ordinary citizens said he was guilty." Now, in order to deconstruct that, you have to realize that they were led to that decision. I mean, they can only decide what they're given and told. They're not able to consider facts they never heard. For example, they never heard that the campaign finance law that they didn't unanimously have to find, but had to be part of their deliberations, is not considered illegal by the federal government. They didn't hear that. The judge refused to let them know that. So it's hard to say. We also know, I guess, from our discussions that we've all had, that the Trump derangement syndrome is a real illness. I mean, the politicians who have it, who knows if they really have it or it's just part of their attempt to keep power and
I always wondered that.
Get money. And I think a lot of it is that. But the ordinary citizens who adopt it, I mean, it's very hard to understand how more of them don't have it because they're inundated with this false propaganda about what an evil person is.
Right.
I mean, just to say that he's going to be a dictator when he was president for 4 years and he wasn't.
Was anything but.
Is absurd. I mean, the first time they said it, I thought people just laugh at it. But people aren't laughing at it. Some people pick it up.
De Niro is a psyop. He's out of his mind.
I don't think De Niro did him any good. But I do think the repeated charge that he's a dictator is actually very smart and unfortunate because I think certain people pick it up. And it's a little bit of a defense against the truth that Biden is a dictator. But they do that. They're unbelievable at charging you with what they did. For example, and it's the president of the same country. Biden bribed or extorted, either way you want to look at it, the president of Ukraine, in order to get the prosecutor put in, who would drop the case on his son and drop the case on the crooked, organized crime oligarch who wanted to save a $40 billion business and paid him bribes to do it. And he basically explains it in detail. And remember I said elements of the crime? That prove every element of the crime of bribery, which is real simple. Here it is. Crime of bribery is offering something of value in exchange for official action. That's why it's called quid pro quo. Latin, this for that. Okay? So our little geniuses all said that, particularly a shifty lying Schiff, that he had a whistleblower kind of painting him as neutral. It turns out the whistleblower was originally Biden's chief appointee to the National Security Council, and was involved in a conversation urging Ukrainian prosecutors to find dirt on Manafort and the two Trumps. So he's been involved in this dirty crap since before the Trump administration. So he's lying, but they cite him as the guy who says that Trump had a conversation with Poroshenko in which he told him he wouldn't get his money unless he investigated the Bidens. Trump immediately put out the transcript. And the transcript showed that there was no discussion of money. He didn't even know about the money until 2 weeks later, Trump or Poroshenko. He didn't make it a this for that. He asked him to consider looking into it because a lot of people were raising how corrupt it was. Had the hard drive been made available by our crooked Attorney General Barr and our crooked FBI director,
Put it right to bed.
it would have been put right to bed because it's on the hard drive.
Right. That's your crooked media.
I mean, you right on there are the meetings that he had with the Burisma people. The whole thing is there. The telephone conversations. Well, they held it back, but it was clear the conversation did not involve a quid pro quo. But Biden's conversation did. Biden offered the president of Ukraine at the time, who was a massive crook, Poroshenko, he offered him $1 billion in loan guarantees in exchange for dismissing the prosecutor who was investigating his son.
And does it with a snide attitude.
And then the ultimate is the guy's removed. Biden approves his successor, and his successor dismisses the case. That is about as strong a bribery case, extortion case, as you're going to find anywhere in the world. It is so clear that it is an absolute outrage that if that's the only thing he did, the man is sitting in that office. But that's just the beginning of a lifetime of crime. The text that I showed you last night, I want to show you that every night. I want you to take a picture of it and hand it to people because the damn press suppresses it, including the conservative press. They keep talking about all these convoluted things about, did Biden get money? Did Joe Biden get money? You don't have to go look anywhere else than Hunter. Hunter has a text in 2018 to his daughter saying, for 30 years, I've paid for all the expenses of this family, and I still had to give half my salary to my father. What the hell was that for? That was the split up of all the influence money to the big guy who got the lion's share. Half plus expenses. That's why he lives like a multi-millionaire when he made a senator's salary and she was a teacher. Ever wonder how he lives in these mansions? Hunter paid for them. Nobody ever went to get the documents. I mean, it is beyond an outrage what this man got away with. And the covering up of the hard drive was one of the worst crimes in the history of America. Because, unfortunately, we have had paid dearly for that. We've paid dearly for that in American lives that wouldn't have been lost. The Ukrainians lost hundreds of thousands of people as a result of it. I mean, do you think if Trump were in office that Putin have invaded? We all know he wouldn't have. He didn't invade when Trump was in office. He did invade when Obama was in office. He did invade when Biden was when Bush was in office, and he did invade for sure when little crappyhead was in office. One time he didn't invade. Trump. I mean, there's no doubt he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have taken the risk. That means that choice, which clearly was subject to substantial fraud before we even talk about stolen ballots, by covering up the hard drive and getting 51 prostitutes, otherwise known as intelligence officials, to say that it was the product of Russian collusion or earmarks of Russian collusion or whatever, and that I was a Russian pawn. Now, if you poll people, it used to be 10%. It's more like 18% say they would have voted against Biden. I mean, you don't even have to get to stolen votes to see how they defrauded the American people. The guy's in there by fraud. Admitted fraud. To have such a resistance to the obvious conclusion that any party that would go that far to pay money for a false story, to pay money to dislodge an American president lawfully elected based on false testimony, to cover up a significant, massive piece of evidence, that they would abstain from fixing votes when they've been doing that for well over 100 years in these cities. You'd have to be a fool if you had evidence of it not to realize that there's a good chance it's true. So they create an atmosphere of terror if you're an election denier. Of course, all of them were election deniers. And then they do the same thing with January 6th. They make even today, he described it as a insurrection. 1,000 people have been arrested. We spent more money in that investigation than anything else. If we spent that much money on investigating the Chinese who have infiltrated here, or the Iranians, maybe we protect ourselves. But we went and we got a 78-year-old lady and put her in jail for 4 years. Well, a guy just went to jail for 3 minutes in the Congress, and we don't know what he did. He didn't do anything wrong. He's on film walking around. He's in jail. And you want to continue this? And now they're going to do that. He's a convicted felon. I think that's a badge of honor to be convicted by Biden. Look, I can tell you from personal experience, because Trump has often said, I'm doing this for you because they're going to come and get you this way. Well, they've come and gotten me that way. And Peter Navarro. And Steve Bannon. And Professor Eastman. And in both indictments, in Atlanta and Arizona, there are a lot of people I don't even know. I don't even know. I have no idea what these poor people are alleged to have done. I mean, if I committed some kind of crime with them, wouldn't I know them? Sidney Powell, who pled guilty and offered state's evidence, clearly completely exonerated me, so they should dismiss me from the case. She said I never talked to him. How can I have a conspiracy with her if she never talked to me? What do we do? Like this? What was the conspiracy? To defend our client? By giving him the benefit of the doubt? I'm supposed to look at a report, and there's a contrary report, but this guy has his report, and he tells me it's accurate. I'm not supposed to offer it? My obligation, ethical, is to view the evidence in the light most favorable to my client. The only time I can't do it is if I know that it's untrue. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know. You collect the evidence. And as the courts recognize until now, in an election case, there's a lot of speculating that has to be done and a lot of expert testimony because you don't have the records. So you have more leeway to be wrong because you got to get an expert, and an expert takes a poll, and he says, based on that poll, I think that 3,000 people voted from out of state based on that survey. Somebody else will say, I did a survey and it's only 25 people. Just like in cases, one expert's here, the other expert's there. But you got to go with the expert for your client unless you know that he did something illegal or untoward. And these people are all people that had a record of honesty and integrity. And at least there was nothing presented that suggested that they weren't telling the truth. It turns out now, it's about Georgia. It turns out that they were absolutely right about Georgia. I mean, they just found that 175,000 pieces of paper ballots are missing my backside, destroyed. And what were we arguing about? That they had a bunch of ballots in there that were phony ballots, and they wouldn't let us examine them. And the governor, Republican, and the Secretary of State, Republican, were the most obstructionist in giving us a chance to look at those ballots. We have never looked at those ballots. They have fought at every stand, every place to stop us looking at a single ballot. Same thing in Pennsylvania. Same place in all the cheating places. So why won't they let us look at the paper? You think I'm stupid? If the paper were clean, if the paper were exculpatory, they wouldn't just show it to me. They'd show it to you. Well, they can't show it to anybody. They have to destroy it. Which is why the 175,000 ballots are missing. Well, the Secretary of State, when this comes out a few weeks ago, says, well, this doesn't show that Trump won the election. It's not outcome determinative. Well, how does he know that? How does he know it's not outcome? Did he see the ballots? 175,000 is a lot. The other guy won by only 11,000, and there's about 6,000 of those that are in jeopardy because they were double counted. And that's been proven. So now you only have, 5,000 to go. And you got 175,000 that are missing, and you got to assume they're missing for a reason. They didn't develop feet and just walk out. Not in that crooked place. I mean, you're dealing with a county that's like New York. It's crooked from top to bottom. And they want to prosecute us? And she testifies, Fannie Ho, that she got the money to pay her boyfriend from her campaign fund? And they all sit there looking like that's perfectly normal? You know why? Because they're crooks.
Yeah.
They have no sense of ethics. Ethics are gone. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said about the crime in New York that we were defining deviancy down. We have defined ethics away. We are so damn corrupt that when an act of shocking corruption is admitted under oath, it doesn't even occur to the judge who, look, let's face it, the judge contributed to her, the judge worked for her, like this guy. And he's presiding, they can't find the judge didn't work for her, who's presiding on the case. And the judge gives them a choice as to who, they're both conflicted, but the judge gives them a choice as to which one gets out. They both have to go if they're both conflicted. I mean, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Well, I'll tell you the final result, and this is really interesting because I don't know the background of this. Kemp, the governor, who's got a lot of questions to answer, more than I can bring up right now, got rid of the Secretary of State, who's been his partner in all of this obstruction from the beginning. He took him off the election commission, but it was the lieutenant governor who said, when asked, is this being done because of or anything he did wrong or whatever. He said, well, all I can tell you is we've had 3 elections under him, and all 3 were screwed up. Wow. So it sounds like they're turning on him. And he's the key to the case against Trump because it's his conversation that allegedly, Trump extorted him and Trump twisted his arm and Trump made poor guy feel bad. Meanwhile, the guy, and Trump didn't know it, had a report in his desk with 48 violations during the election, including the expert saying there's no chain of custody for any of these ballots, which would make them all questionable.
Right.
And he never told anybody about it. It was discovered a year and a half later with an FOIA request, and everybody covered it up. Finally, this last one I think was a little too much to say, well, 175,000 ballots, it still was a perfect election. They're just missing. So they've separated them. Now, was that a voluntary separation to get him out of the heat? Or was it a scapegoat separation and they'll make him the scapegoat? He wouldn't be a bad scapegoat because he is pretty responsible for a lot of the crap that went on, including the deals that were made before the election that screwed Trump and the Republicans.
That's right, Mayor, and thank you for never shying away from speaking about what you know to be true, and thank you for look, I know there's a saying that they're not after you, they're not after Trump, they're after we the people. And while that's certainly true, you've certainly taken a lot of arrows and continue to, but it's not going to keep you from continuing to fight for the country that you love.
Just gets me to fight harder.
It gets you to fight harder.
We've just begun to fight. This conviction now raises my my enthusiasm for fighting and winning this election. I hope it raises yours. I have a chapter in my ancient book, Leadership.
We got to pull that out.
Called Stand Up to Bullies. Come on. These are bullies. Nothing more satisfying than staring down the bullies. And I'm telling you, you've never seen more of a bully than Biden. He got all the characteristics of it. A pathological, mentally ill liar who constantly makes himself more important than he is, makes himself the hero of the story. Obviously, the guy's got a massive, deep insecurity complex from being the dumbest kid on his block from the time he was born, the dumbest kid in his class, the dumbest kid in law school, and the dumbest guy in the Senate. Senators who were his friends would tell you that behind his back. Boy, Joe was really stupid.
Somehow he fashioned that into a shtick that he uses on everybody every time he gets on camera.
Well, it didn't work in the past. I mean, in 1988, they wrote him off completely. Sam Donaldson said, thank God this guy's not going to be president. He's fundamentally dishonest. I mean, the reporters of the past didn't have a problem, keeping us from, even if they were more liberal and more inclined toward Democrats, they weren't going to have their country guided by a crooked Democrat. Yeah. If they knew it. They had a certain amount of loyalty and patriotism. These guys, it's gone. They were all, most of them were educated with very, very severe Marxist principles.
People got easy to buy out, didn't they?
Because they've become totally materialistic.
Yes.
There's a great column in the Post today, I think it's today, in which basically he says it used to be that most people in public office were operated on principle, and now they operate completely on opportunism. Yes. There's no sense of principle at all. It's what's good for me.
Well, and you mentioned that earlier today, Mayor.
They haven't been trained morally.
Principles be damned, make me rich.
Well, where's the outcry? Where's the outcry from the legal community? And what would mean even more right now is for people that didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2020 or didn't support him publicly, for them to come out and speak out against this obvious great American injustice.
Yeah. Well, we only get this country back if we bring God back.
Yeah.
And with bringing God back, we bring back a set of morals. And we have obligations higher than our own advancement and the advancement of our ridiculous political party, either one. Our country is so much more important than either political party.
Well, unfortunately, that isn't necessarily comforting news, right, Mayor? With the way they've been pushing God out of American life for what seems like decades now.
In 2012, I think it was 2012, the Democrats took away the prayer before the Democratic convention.
That's right. I remember that.
They put it back for Hillary and for Biden, but it's like a
that kind of gave us.
We pray to the amorphous supreme being. If there is a supreme being, if he really did create the universe, could have actually been we pray to the Big Bang. Please, Big Bang, save us. I mean, who knows what the hell it is?
Well, didn't their religion tell us that we'd be underwater by 2020 or something? Remember climate? When I was in high school, climate change was the big religion.
Oh, 2010.
2010. Yeah. I remember that was the big when I was in high school.
Gore had us going in 2010.
Isn't that amazing? In high school, it was blasphemy to speak out against Al Gore in that movie.
Multi-billionaire.
Remember that movie?
Multi-billionaire Gore had us going in 2010.
I got kicked out of science. I got kicked out of 10th grade science class for questioning that Al Gore movie, Inconvenient Truth. I said something about Glenn Beck and they threw me out.
Why don't we recommend that tomorrow morning, with no preparation, we give the crooked judge a test on Ramos versus Louisiana to see if he read it. What do you think the odds are?
0. Well, he might read it now if he read anything you said about it today. He's panicking now.
He doesn't look like he has the intellect.
No, he's panicking though.
If you see it, I'm going to show it to him. Read it.
Yeah. That's kryptonite.
Yeah, reading.
So, at late, Engeron is obvious about it. He's got the girl sitting on his lap to do that stuff for him. They're all making it into salacious stuff. The girl sitting on his lap. She's not there for that purpose. She's there like the Communist Party agent was in Hunt for the Red October. She runs the submarine. She makes sure that he's true to the principles of the Democratic Party boss in Manhattan, which is to screw Trump and to frame him. And she has exactly the background for it. She doesn't have a legal background. Her background is contributing to 18 different Democratic clubs, carrying petitions for them, running for judge herself when they needed a candidate. She's not a legal scholar. She's a political... And she's there to make sure that he's got the backbone to do things like say that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million and a house that is, 1/20th. The property is 1/20th the size of Mar-a-Lago, and the house is about 1/10 the size of Mar-a-Lago. About 4 blocks away, it just sold for $72 million. Mar-a-Lago is
15 times the size.
Well, I would say that if you wanted to evaluate it low, you'd put it at about 750 million. If you wanted to evaluate it high, you'd put it about 1.3 billion. And so you want to come out with something like 800, 900, or a billion. Also, you could make the argument as a celebrity house with historic significance. It's any value because you could get somebody, some wealthy guy that has 50 billion that says, I'll pay 2 billion for it. I just want it. Makes it easy. I'll just take 2 billion, put it in. You got to sell it to me. I mean, it has, it could be put in a category of unknown value upper end, which probably is true because there's a whole celebrity factor, even in evaluating your worth, which I had to go through in my divorce because my wife wanted me to calculate my celebrity value so she could get half of it.
A lawyer's.
No, but I mean, this is an established part of the law. I'm not sure how fair it is, but it exists. Same thing exists with property. For example, when I prove that I paid for my Yankee rings, right, that I've given to Andrew, my Yankee rings I paid for. Well, of course, they were trying to say that George Steinbrenner gave them to me as a bribe, so I'd build a new Yankee Stadium. I mean, first of all, anybody that was going to build a new Yankee Stadium would need a lot more than a few Yankee rings to do it. And I wouldn't take a bribe if you put a gun to my head. It just wouldn't. And if you don't believe that, it's your problem. But luckily, I've always been prepared for them, because I know from my experience in the 80s with how crooked the Democrats are. So when I was offered the first ring by George Steinbrenner in 1996, I sent it back. And I said, I can't accept it. He said, well, I don't know if he said you could buy it or somebody said you could buy it. But at that time, I was on government salary. My wife made more money than I did. We had 2 kids. And I thought it was a little bit of a luxury for me to pay. I didn't even know what it cost. And I even thought if I bought it at that point, it might. So never didn't hear anything about it again for years. Yankees won 3 more World Series. I was at them. I was the #1 Yankee fan in the city. As I told Joe Torre, I'm the reason he won all those games. And he said he did take my advice, and I was very important because he would do just the opposite. So I'm out of office about 3-4 months, and they invite me to a luncheon in Florida when the Yankees start spring training to show me the new field that was built just like Yankee Stadium. And George is there. His whole family is there. Randy Levine, my former deputy mayor, I think he was president of the Yankees at the time. And they present me with 3 Yankee rings. And I say, what's this about? He said, well, Mr. Steinbrenner had a ring made for you every year and kept it. Wow. And said he could give it to you after you were mayor, because then there would be no ethical considerations. I said, George, I'm only going to accept these if I can pay the retail value. Wow. He said, I wouldn't accept it. I said, well, then I can't take them. He said, all right, but you're going to have to find out yourself. So I went and luckily I got my assistant, Beth Patron, to do it, because she kept all the records. And she got the value that if a player lost the ring and had to buy a new ring, what you would pay for it. And we paid him for those 3. But then we said, you have a 4th one, the first one that I sent back. And they said, you never sent it back. And we said, we did send it back. And luckily, Beth had a note sending it back. So this thing is missing for about 8 months. So I paid for the 3. And this was the least expensive because it was the first one. I mean, they went up very, very much in value. I'm guessing what they used to be. It was like 4, 6, 8, and 15, something like that, or 14. The rings just got bigger and bigger. The last one is so big you can't wear it. So the first one was like considerably less. It was the least onerous to pay for, but I didn't have it. All of a sudden, very sheepishly, Beth walks in and says, they found the ring, here it is. And I already figured out, I know you're going to want to send a check. I made one out for you. I said, where was it? Well, I'm not going to tell you. I want to know. It was in Randy Levine's safe, and he never thought of looking there. When they got it back, because Randy worked for me at one time, they put it in his safe because he'd be the one to give it to me, and they all forgot where they put it. And Randy apparently never put anything else in the safe. So when I ran for president, they start off with the story that I was given the rings and never paid for them. So I say, screw you, here are my receipts. Then they say, well, they went out and they asked people, the collectors, how much would a Giuliani ring be worth? Like the one that's worth $4,000, let's say. Oh my God, that'd be worth 10. And how about the other one that's worth 22? Well, that'd be worth about 40. I said, well, you really should have paid, that plus celebrity value. I said, I never thought of that. I guess I should do the same thing with suits. So the next time I buy a suit for $800, because somebody would repurchase it, because I'm a celebrity for $2,000, I'm going to pay $2,000 for it. I'm going to tell the guy, figure out the celebrity value if I resell it. I said, jackasses, that doesn't become a value because you're so stupid and ignorant. It doesn't become a value if I decide to sell it. Right. And then I do pay taxes on it. It's called capital gains tax. Did you ever hear capital gains tax? So if I bought the ring at the retail value at the time, my celebrity value only becomes irrelevant when I cash it in.
Right.
So if I sell it for $100,000 and I bought it for 10, I got to pay a $90,000 a tax on $90,000. But since I intend to give them all to my son, screw you. And I did. I'm going to say this. I was scrupulously honest. I kept records after records after records. You can ask my staff that. They spent all their time documenting things. I received wine once that I shouldn't have gotten, and I returned it all. One bottle was missing because one of my staff had probably taken it over the Christmas holidays, and I got them all together after Christmas. And I said, if that bottle isn't back there, I have a pretty good idea who did it. They're not only going to be gone, but they're going to be gone, and they're going to be hurting very badly. And they all knew I was a boxer, and they weren't sure if I would beat them up. And a day later, it was returned. Boom. And then we sent it back, even though the guy was dead.
Wow.
But I wasn't, they were too damn valuable. I could have also, sometimes I would donate things that were given to me.
Yeah. Well, that's
the only things I would keep were things of nominal value.
And I bet you, I interned for a governor. I bet you got a lot of stuff every day, almost every day. You had an office or some
I had an office
member who was in charge of the gifts, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
And you had to, I don't know, in the 90s, I'm guessing it was similar. You had to mark anything that came in, and I'm sure you refused stuff that was brought to you personally, but you had to mark anything that came in the mail, right? And then list it.
They never even looked at it. They looked at it first. And
yeah, you didn't even.
a lot of the stuff I got, I never saw.
Yeah, you never saw it. Because you had
They just
policies.
I
Show me.
Keep it and get rid of it.
Donate it to charity or send it back. And that's what the right thing to do. Well, before we go, we'd like to do this when we have a large audience. We have a record-breaking audience tonight. Comment below. Let us know what city and
I'm going to tell you one thing.
what country you're tuning in from. And let's continue with this is a great conversation.
A cap, a scarf, and a knife that was brought to me by the Rangers who went into Afghanistan on horseback. It's a movie about it. They came to me after it was over, and they said, we're giving you Mr. Giuliani Mayor Giuliani, because you were a source of such great inspiration for us. We're giving you the knife we used to kill the first guy. And they told me his name.
Wow.
They gave me a picture of the installation. And they said, when we killed him, we said to him, this is for New York City, because he was involved with the people who organized it. And then they told me some more things that I can't repeat, and showed me a few things that I would never tell you. And that one I kept.
That has this.
And I got it after I was mayor, but I kept that. And I can't pay him for it, but I kept it. And I've got it in a very special place. And when I want to remind myself of the threat of Islamic terrorism that Obama tried to desensitize us to, that I thought was extraordinarily traitor. I thought it was the actions of a traitor, and I thought it was done deliberately. I would go look at it, and I go look at it now that the weasel FBI director tells us we have so many more terrorists in this country. I don't know how Biden would escape the fact that he's letting terrorists in if he just tells people to come across the border. Well, I hope that the American people, as they have on very, very important times when their freedom is being taken away from them, are going to fight back like hell, like we fought back after September 11. This is an extraordinarily serious attack that has had a great deal of success so far on our freedom. They have brainwashed many of our children without our realizing it. They've taken, in many ways, God away from us. and from the firm foundation that supports for a moral country. We are no longer a country of morals. We're a country of individual opportunism. They have demoralized our police departments to such an extent that records have been set in Democrat cities for murder. What kind of record is that for murder? Records have been set for drug overdoses each year worse, solely because of the president and his policy of allowing people to come in. Never, never does the press focus on not just the ones arrested who are set free and not vetted, or the ones that are gotaways that we see. They don't focus on the ones we never see. And when the first two groups go up, the second group goes up because the cartels have free reign. The more tied up our Border Patrol, the more people they can get in that we never get to see. And the big value is in the people you don't get to see. They're the ones that have made America the #1 country in the world for human trafficking, the #1 country in the world for child trafficking. That's a disgrace. How can we say we're a great country and we don't take care of children? How can we? And these are all not happening because something in the atmosphere changed. They're happening because of Joe Biden. They're happening because of the progressive policies of the Democratic Party. It isn't just Joe Biden, it's all the people around him. I mean, when people say Biden can't decide, he's a dummy, he's a dope, he's not deciding, somebody's deciding all these things. In a way, that's worse. That means there's a whole committee there. I mean, if we were to get rid of Biden, right? Let's say he retires.
Which we're going to inevitably.
Well, yeah, I can't predict lifespan. I'm roughly, just a little younger than him, but I kind of think I'm a lot healthier. But I mean, I know, based on his disease, there will come a point where he doesn't know who he is. It's inevitable. You don't escape dementia. If you stay alive long enough, you go into a state where you don't know who the hell you are. And then if you're physically healthy enough, you can stay alive for 4, 5, 6 years in a vegetative state. That's what he's headed for if he doesn't die before that. Now, that could happen anytime. It could happen now. It could happen 2 or 3 years from now. But the next one to take over is going to be just as bad or worse, because the secret little deep state government is making the decisions, not him. And they say it's Obama. Somehow Obama isn't energetic enough, or believe it or not, smart enough. He's not a dummy like in his case.
But he's a signatory.
In his case, his intellect is exaggerated. It's exaggerated. It's not what we think it is. So there are other people involved in this. So I don't know exactly who they are. I have suspicions, but they're sure going to be there if the Democrats hold on to this thing. And 4 years later, it's all be gone. Better than half of it's gone now. And we got to go get it back. This isn't like 15 and 16 where we could say we're going to prevent the country from going fascist or communist. We're there now. I mean, he's getting ready to sign a treaty with WHO, the health organization that gives away our sovereignty on health decisions to an organization dominated by China, Red China. You think maybe all that money has something to do with that? If you don't, get somebody else to make practical decisions for your family, okay? Well,
we're seeing a lot on Twitter, for example, tonight. People, look, I'm going even as far as to say that a part of America died tonight. A part of America died tonight with this verdict.
The system.
And it's truly it's not hyperbole to say it's truly a dark day in our country's history, correct?
Ted, I don't think that any of us, and even people more eloquent than us, poets, can really describe adequately what was done to us. And today is one of the culminations, possibly other ones are coming, of years of their taking away from us a nation of laws. We are not governed by laws. If we were governed by laws, this man would never have done the things he did in this trial. Make it simple. He would not have said you can reach a non-unanimous verdict because the law for 800 years has been that you have to be unanimous. He would have dismissed the indictment on day one when it failed to specify the felony. That's a violation of due process. Maybe it isn't as time-honored and as clear as unanimity, but it's pretty damn clear and it's pretty obvious. How do you defend yourself against a felony? You got to be told what it is, the crime you committed. People don't get arrested for a felony. A felony is a description of the crime they committed. It's the generic description. You don't get convicted of generic crime, which is what he was convicted of. We actually don't know what he's convicted of, which means he was convicted of nothing. And he can say I wasn't convicted of a crime. At least not under 800 years of our civilization. So, yeah. But you know, so they now have gotten with our justice system where they have gotten with our school systems. They've taken over. In many of our cities, they have taken the children away from the parents. When cities and states can pass laws saying they can mutilate your child without your permission, it is a fundamental change in the principle that the parent is the guardian of the child until 18. And we then incorporate the Marxist principle, highly utilized by Stalin and Hitler, that the child, if you're going to have a true dictatorship, the child has to become the property of the state. So if you talk to my daughter-in-law from Lithuania, she would say, you know, the state decided if you were going to go to medical school, or if you were going to go to law school, or if you were going to go to school at all, or you were going to be she was a gymnast. And she wanted to be a gymnast, but they decided that's what she would be. If she didn't want to be, sorry, you're going to be a gymnast. Or your whole family can go off and some of her family did go off.
KGB agents getting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, your child is the property of the state. That is a fundamental Marxist principle and a fundamental principle of Black Lives Matter. I think maybe number one. Well, number one is sort of a backdoor way of getting to it, which is to do away with the, what do they call it, the generic family. Meaning what that means is no father, for sure. Fathers are bad. Men are bad. Now, why are men bad? Because the founders of Black Lives Matter, before they hooked on to Black Lives Matter as a way of getting millions and fleecing people, were lesbian advocates, but extreme lesbianism. What?
The women's liberation?
From some, yeah. They she'll train Marxists. I think trained by the Chinese. Patrice Cullors will tell you, I'm very proud of it. I mean, when I was explaining they were Marxists, people were saying, I said, just read what she's written. But nobody bothers to even read anymore.
Right. That's right.
They just listen to the boob tube, and they have some moron on CNN or who say things that are ridiculous, and they don't bother to read. I'm like that.
The judge isn't reading.
That opinion is really much, but I'm talking about like to figure out what Black Lives Matter was about. You had to do a little work because Google hid it. But if you went on another search engine, you could find their original set of principles. You take their original set of principles and you put it against an outline of the Marx Engels guide to how to turn a country communist, and it matched about 90%.
Perfect template.
And then when you read her biographies, in her biographies, she very proudly says she was a trained Marxist.
Yeah.
And she wants to overthrow the U.S. government.
These
And-
people tell you what they want to
And
do.
these people gave her millions because she ran off with it. But
This is going to be studied one day if the human race ever survives in the history books. It's going to be, oh, forget it.
well, I think we've kept our people on. I mean, today is a special day for the wrong reasons, or maybe the right reasons. Someone, and I can't remember who, and I will remember by tomorrow, but I talked to so many people on this to try to get their opinions. They said maybe this will turn out to be a very good day, because sometimes you got to reveal this to turn it around. And I'm going to tell you there's some truth to that. I'll tell you why. Had I not seen it, I wouldn't believe it. So if I hadn't spent the last 5-6 years defending Trump and being persecuted, and I wouldn't have believed it. Like when you say they fixed the election, it sounds like who would do that?
Right.
Well, the same people that would becomes a little bit easier when you put it in context, right?
Yeah.
Well, we do know they paid for a completely false report in order to stop this man from being president, which is out and out a crime. And we do know that they continued to push that report when he was the lawfully elected president to remove him by illegal means. And we do know that there was a hard drive that proved everything they were saying was wrong. And they and some Republicans conspired to hide it and impeach him anyway, when the impeachment would be unnecessary if it produced a hard drive. Allow Biden to accuse him and me of being Russian pawns when the hard drive would prove we weren't. So if they did all that, how much of a leap is it that they fixed the election? How much of a leap is it that they're framing him for non-crimes? Because it's the only way they can stop him. And even if they can't put in a position where they can convict of a crime that disqualifies him for office, they can interrupt his campaigning, as they just did, and they can try to put all of this garbage on him. And I don't know what else they have in mind. These people are more evil than I am capable of describing to you. And this, what happened today, is more damaging to your life than I'm capable of describing. And since there's always something abstract about the system of justice until you're in it, and they want to put you away for the rest of your life, like me, when it stops being abstract, it becomes the most serious thing in the world. You have no idea how unbelievably damaging today is to one of the most precious gifts that was given to us by our founding fathers. And that's the gift of justice, of a fair and impartial system where all men are treated and women are treated equally. That always has to be our goal. And whenever we don't, it has to be excised immediately in order to create a more perfect union. Well, we're not excising this. We're continuing it. I mean, we could just build a whole history here. Hillary Clinton, case fixed by Comey, both get off the hook. And both of them should have been prosecuted. Maybe it would have deterred future. I believe that. And I know that's controversial, but I do believe it. I believe if we had stopped them, it's sort of like my broken windows theory. If we had stopped them at the beginning, they wouldn't have had the guts to do the rest because they're afraid to go to jail. We're all afraid to go to jail. Nobody wants to go to jail. It's ridiculous that anybody would want to go to jail unless you're a mafia guy and you can see all your pals there. Well, there are going to be plenty more on this to discuss and things we pick up and observations, and maybe we'll have a little more insight by tomorrow when we sleep on this as to what the fallout will be in terms of the election. There's also the question, can any of these other trials get to trial before? Highly doubtful. The one in Florida, it looks like they're going to put Smith on trial before Trump. It looks like he did the same thing there that they should have known he was going to do from the Supreme Court opinion that says he's an unethical scoundrel. The Fannie, the whole case, I can't see how her problems don't get straightened out before there's time to go to trial before the election. So what's left? The only thing left is the other Smith trial in Washington, where you still don't have a Supreme Court decision, which may return some or all of it for findings on the nature of the immunity. So this may be the only case. And you know the Democrats are going to use it for every convicted felon. You got to realize that is a badge of honor if you have been convicted by a dictator. I consider it a badge of honor that they indicted me. I feel like I had done something really, really valuable, or they wouldn't have considered me so dangerous. Because that's what the communists did. They go after the people that were truly effective. A heck of a way to look at it, but if you're a person of principle, that's the way you look at it. And if you're a person that realizes the implications of what could happen for our country, and unfortunately, I feel the full weight of it. And I hope more and more of you do, because it'll motivate you to not take any chances and get cheated again. Well, thank you very much for listening. Stay with us, because I only feel confident that you're getting the truth nowadays if I or a handful of people give it to you. And most of them are headed for jail. Or will be shortly. But thank you again. And I'm going to ask you all, we haven't had a chance to talk about Israel much, but I'm going to ask you to pray for the people of Israel, because they are under a serious threat of being annihilated by a group of people that they can't take on the way they should, because of our president, who is a traitor to the United States and a double-crosser of the state of Israel. And pray for the people of the United States now more than ever, when our gift of justice has been taken from us, ripped away from us. Any of us could now be treated the way Donald Trump was. You could be tried without a unanimous jury. They could arrest you and not bother to tell you what it is. They could say you were in Washington on January 6th, and you could be 90 years old and they'll put you in jail for 4 years. This is a dictatorship. Not exaggerating. So pray for us, God. And God bless America. bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. It was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are